Hello and welcome to The Print. There have been a lot of developments between India and Canada, especially on the bilateral relationship and the Hardeep Singh Nijjar case. And today we have Canadian journalist Daniel Bordman to shed some light. He's based in Toronto. Thanks, Daniel, for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure to be here.
My first question is, recently the Canadian Parliament held a minute of silence on the anniversary of the Nijjar killing. And there were no comments later from the top Canadian leadership when the anniversary of the 1985 Kanishka bombing took place. Now, my simple question to you is, do you see this as a sort of inconsistent messaging from Ottawa?
No, I don't see it as inconsistent messaging. It's consistently, morally inverted. You can say that, but it's rather consistent from the Trudeau government that they support Hardeep Singh Nijjar. I mean, you said, I think the way you all sort of do this to you, but you almost called it an assassination on this. A big reason why we're having a minute for Hardeep Singh Nijjar is Occam's razor, political theater, right? To send the implication that it was India behind it and promote this as means of, tacit political theater, right? I think that's if there is any sort of reading the political tea leaves there, that's what this is, right? And then the moral inversion, or this is where people would say the hypocrisy is, why are you giving a minute of silence for Nijjar and then not honoring the victims of the worst terrorist attack in Canadian history, an act that Nijjar supported. And a man, the mastermind, Pamar, constantly, like, banners of him were at the temple, the Gurdwara Nijjar Ryan for like the last decade or so. So this is the moral inversion, right? Now, is it hypocritical? Maybe, but it's not inconsistent. It's been consistent since 2015, and it will be consistent. And Justin Trudeau's and Jagmeet Singh have made it clear, like, this is their moral framework. So.
So not surprising. Just a clarification.
Don't be surprised by anything. If Justin Trudeau does something ridiculous, and it might not all be malice. Like, there might be a lot of stupidity involved in a lot of it too. This is Canada. It might be a combination of the two. But again, don't be surprised by the next ridiculous thing you hear coming out of this government.
And also, just a clarification for our viewers, there's been a lot of different terminology, which Daniel has very rightly pointed out. I did almost say assassination. Of course, I meant to say killing, which I did so. But just goes to show the different terminology used in Canada and India with regard to this very tense murder case.
I mean, the Liberals and our media have, the Canadian media has framed this as India did this since day one. The Liberals, if you're in Canada and you're the average Canadian and you consume Canadian mainstream broadcasting, it's been framed to you as the Indian government killed Hardeep Singh Nijjar, a Sikh activist. And then the World Sikh Organization comes on to say that blah, 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 Khalistan.
So if I could get a little bit into the specifics of the case, 4 Indian nationals have been arrested in this case so far. And we at ThePrint had in fact reported that none of these arrested suspects have sought legal assistance nor consular access from the Indian High Commission in Canada. Why do you think they aren't reaching out to their own country's mission?
I mean, I can't speculate on their narratives. It could be a lot of things, right? I mean, it's again in the way you frame it, right? So if I'm in the CBC, Justin Trudeau and Liberals, I'd say, well, they're doing it because they don't want to look guilty, because they know that if they were told by the Indian government, they would look like they're affiliated, because they know they're affiliated with the Indian government. That's why they're not talking to them, to try and pretend that they're not. Like that. You could say it that way.
Narrative from Canada, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that would be a Canadian. Okay, then you can flip the other side. Say, okay, these guys were a part of a Sikh gang war, right? These are, yes, they're Indian nationals, quote unquote, but they're Khalistani gang members. And the reason they're Khalistani gang members, they don't want to go to the Indian High Commission because they know that the Indian High Commission won't have their back because they're Khalistani gang members. So again, the thing with the Nijjar case is there's always been two plausible narratives competing with each other that neither side's been debunked, right? And we kind of created a problem by, instead of it's a very Canadian thing. Usually we wait to the end of a trial, and then after there's a verdict, then we go. That's a very Canadian event. We're very different from America in that way. Like, if you want a fundamental difference between our countries, it's there. What Trudeau did is broke Canadian tradition, diplomatic tradition, and, from day one, started framing it and blamed them and said, okay, it basically went 99% of the way there, to blame Modi and India and all this different stuff on behalf of the head of the Khalistan Tiger Force, who I hope you put a graphic of their logo, because it is a giant lion in the middle of the thing. Like, that's Canada, right? So, well, this is the problem. Is we've always had two possible narratives. Like, could this be Khalistani gang war? Yeah, it's happened before. We've had Khalistanis kill Khalistanis over drugs or whatever it is. Could this be the Indian government? If they were going to assassinate someone, would you probably, pay a Khalistani gang member to off another Khalistani gang member and put your finger on the scale of a Khalistani gang war already going on? Yeah, that might be how I would do it, right? So you have these two competing narratives. Neither side's been proven in a court of law, but the problem is you have the Canadian federal government, putting the finger on the scale and taking one narrative preemptively and using it as a political weapon against India out of nowhere for no political gain whatsoever. And it's India's perplexed, like, why are you doing this? This is crazy. And Canadians are going, it's just what we do since 2015 now. This is it's just scandal after scandal after scandal. And it's such a running mill of scandals and foreign interference that by the time Justin Trudeau does something ridiculous, it makes a story. By the next week, he's either brought a Nazi into Parliament, or he's had a press conference where he calls everyone who is small, bigoted, and racist. Like, so it's just one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, that it's been lost in a sea of incompetence. That it's hard for Canadians to even track any stories over the process of months, because there's just this confluence of Trudeau scandals. And you see in the polling, like, he's deeply unpopular, and the Liberals just lost a riding they had won by 23 points last election. So St. Paul's, yeah. So Canadians are kind of done with this, but the circus, it's Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh, and Jagmeet Singh is propping up the Liberal Party. He's the head of the NDP. Leaders control the parties in Canada a lot more than they do in other countries. Jagmeet Singh's a Khalistani. 2 + 2 = 4.
It begs the question, right? How did these 4 arrested men enter Canada on student visas? Does it beg the question also about how robust Canada's immigration processes are?
You asked the perfect question. This is the question in Canada. I think this is where Canadians are really taking a notice of it, and it's more than just immigration is a big issue everywhere, but in Canada, I like to say, like, I have a map behind me, but you can see, so it's proof. You can see the map. Canada's immune from immigration crisis. East, ocean. West, ocean. North of us, just ice. No one lives there. To our south, richest country in the history of the world. We're immune to an immigration crisis. Again, we have one. Student visas, right? So there's these strip malls where you take a course there, but it's not even a physical school. It's like 1 hour of online school a week, and we have this, and it's like the immigration fraud scheme, and it's people in our country are taking advantage of people in other countries. People and bad actors in those countries are taking advantage of their people also. And, like, they're taking tens of thousands of dollars to go study in Canada. You think you're studying in Canada. You think, oh, I'm going to Queen's University, York, Toronto, U of T, and you're at, somewhere, in a mall with a thing that means doing nothing. And then, you end up having to, work Uber and live in a house with 10 other people. And it's driving the housing markets up, and it's bringing in people. So, and then these people, the Khalistanis, come along, and, hey, you want money, you want power, you want prestige, gangs, right? This is how gangs survive. Like, is some guy a crazy Khalistani when he comes out of India? No, but you get in a bad situation, you're out with 10 guys, someone comes and offers you a chance to get your own apartment to do this, and that. Oh, and he's part of this, and it's more legitimate. You get into the Gurdwaras there, and next thing you know, you're in a Khalistani gang. And this is what Canadians are really waking up to. And that's where, because it's getting so out of control that everyone's seeing it, right? Car theft was just a big thing. Like, we're not deterring crime, and we have these gangs now, and we have, international terrorist organizations and gangs and different mafias just allowed to run amok. So they control the ports now, and they can just, like, over $1 billion of car theft industry. Like, that means, like, they have people at both sides of the ports, at both sides of the country. That means like international criminal organizations. It's run amok, and Canadians, like, we like to pride ourselves in a peaceful country, but we can see what's going on. It's now leaked into everything. The Toronto police are telling us, leave your car keys outside your house so they steal your car and don't enter your home.
If I could also ask you a bit of a hypothetical, Canada is going to parliamentary elections next year. Let's say Pierre Poilievre comes as the prime minister. Do you have faith as a journalist, as also a Canadian citizen, that the Conservatives will make good on India's demand to limit political space to extremists, be it Sikhs or otherwise?
I have more faith in Polyev than Justin Trudeau. Like, I don't have faith in any politician as a general nature, right? I tend to not put my faith in politicians and say, oh, they're just going to take care of it. And there's that. The Conservative Party is significantly better than the Liberal Party or the Liberal NDP coalition, whatever you call it, on every metric here. But they are not perfect. They have their own problems. I mean,
Such as
with infiltration, right? You can look at certain, the World Sikh Organization and certain political conservatives that have connection there. Like, it's by no means perfect. So I do not expect Polyev to be a silver bullet and fix all these problems. But I do know the people inside the Conservative Party opposed to the Liberal Party. There is more mechanisms for internal pressure to be put on Pierre Poilievre to stop this than there are on Justin Trudeau. There are no levers to pull on Justin Trudeau to make him not support Khalistan. I mean, this is a man who said that returning ISIS fighters, he's bringing back fighters from literally ISIS to de-radicalize our Muslim population. The problem is they could be a powerful voice for de-radicalization. And so if this couldn't defeat him in the Liberal Party, like there's no lever to pull to say, oh, he might be a terrorist support. If the guy full-throated goes out and says ISIS here now, I like it. But within the Conservative Party, if Conservatives are made aware of certain things, there are mechanisms within the party, because the party's base, right? If the party's base finds out about this, the Conservative Party base is much more naturally opposed to, whether it be Muslim Brotherhood members, Khalistani operatives, CCP, any sort of, then would be the Liberal Party, which would take the no, we're accepting, that's just racist stereotypes and figments of people's imagination type thinking. So will it be better? Yes. Do I have faith in Pierre Poilievre to fix everything? No.
So does it just boil down to the fact that the Liberals have a larger support base in the Sikh community compared to the Conservatives?
Well, no. In some areas, like, yeah, certain ways of, local riding politics can play a factor there, but the conservatives need to learn that they can only win on conservative principles, and they can't do vote bank politics. Like, that's sort of the pathway forward, is when the Conservatives realize that you actually can appeal to the majority of Sikhs by being anti-Khalistani, because the majority of Sikhs are not Khalistani in Canada, right? The problem is that in nomination ridings, where there's only a few hundred votes being cast, can a Khalistani, a Muslim Brotherhood, a CC, like, can a radical good, like a set of people there, can they go and influence a single ride nomination, get their guy onto the ballot, right? That's how political infiltration tends to work. Now, there are mechanisms to stop that, but if you go farther, if you get your people into the party higher up, and you have your people who are Khalistani or Muslim Brotherhood or CCP or whatever Russian linked, if they're have the ability to disqualify candidates then, and they're in the party mechanism, right? Now you have a big problem. So this is something that Canadians are starting to wake up. We're talking about foreign interference. It is this big thing. We do know, like, I know the Canadian media well enough to know that they're running cover for Justin Trudeau on the foreign interference, and they do know it's a big story and Canadians care about it. So when Pierre Poilievre does win and become prime minister, they're going to start attacking him on foreign interference and say it's a big thing. Oh, look at all the foreign interference that Pierre Poilievre is doing. That could be used to maybe clean up some of this, but I'm always skeptical when it comes to Canadian politics, and plan for the worst, hope for the best. but again, expect the worst, and then you can never be disappointed by the Canadian government.
Before we wrap up, Daniel, I also want to talk about the foreign interference probe that the Canadian government has been conducting. India has been put on the same shelf of foreign interference perpetrators such as Iran and China. That's quite an exclusive group to be part of. It's initially, when the foreign interference probe was set up, it was focused on Chinese interference. Later, other countries were added to it. And in fact, according to reports, it was NDP's Jagmeet Singh's insistence, or rather suggestion.
He was very public. He was the one who spearheaded that.
Right. Spearheaded India being included in the group.
Yes.
Now the report has claimed that Indian political forces have tried to influence Canadian policy vis-a-vis the Sikh community that lives there. And it's basically New Delhi's objective is to try and focus specifically on these community groups, so much so that the narrative around them, or what have you, is in line with Delhi's national security interests, right? What do you make about the findings of this foreign interference report vis-a-vis India?
It's trash. Like, it makes no sense. I mean, I've covered enough foreign interference, and I've seen, again, I've covered Iranian foreign interference from the IRGC. We have 700 active IRGC members on the streets of Canada, according to a report, and we consider them, we now find the list of the IRGC as a terrorist organization. There are not 700 active Indian, I can't remember the Indian CIA is called at the moment, officials running around Canada trying to do this. So to say that India is above Iran, it just on that metric is laughable. So it's either it could be a couple things. Like my suspicion when I saw the report, and I do believe, to fudge the numbers, and again, we've seen enough phony reports from this Liberal NDP government where they appoint someone friendly to the thing. We've seen from the Freedom Convoy where they appoint a friend to investigate themselves to determine they're amazing. You probably have a bunch of Khalistani foreign interference and foreign infiltration. So these Khalistani gang members and that. This is probably being counted under India's tally, even though it's an anti-Indian movement and should be probably chalked up to China or Pakistan, depending on what's going on at the moment. You also then have this thing where, okay, they're trying to frame that we have this Khalistani problem that's out of control. And yes, okay, India is aware of it. And is India, taking means to counter foreign terrorist groups or anti-Indian hostilities? Like, yes, but like, we're allied countries, and to an extent, we're all allowed to have sort of talk to each other, right? Is me covering Australian politics or exposing an Australian MP, if I could, is that foreign interference, or is that something that happened, right? Is the Canadian government going to count this as foreign interference because you're in India and I'm in Canada and you're trying to use me to influence the Sikh community against Khalistan in some way? Are we counting the fact that Indian media is making content centered on Canada and that's getting into Canada? Okay, that could be a natural thing. They could be mad at Canada. They could be making content. You could have Indian Canadians who understand the content and are sharing it, and then it goes around, and then, right? So what exactly is the foreign interference we're talking about? So we're talking about they're in the Sikh community saying, don't be terrorists and don't try and run a separatist movement that even the Canadian government acknowledges as a terrorist organization. What I still don't understand what it is they're doing. And I understand 700 IRGC agents on Canadian soil and money laundering and all that with Iran. China is what we should be probing. This was, on the election stuff. That's the big stuff, the Chinese foreign interference, right? So I know the level of Iranian foreign interference, and show me the evidence of Indian foreign interference that isn't the Indian government doesn't like people who advocate for terrorist attacks against India.
On that note, Daniel, thanks for joining us on the program. It's quite insightful to listen to you, and we'll be tracking this important topic, as I'm sure you will be too.
Right, thanks so much for having me.